Somebody asked me recently kind of what I think I'm good at in business, and I'm frankly not the smartest guy in the room. I have a good head on my shoulders, but I'm not the smartest guy in the room. I basically chalk it up to two things. One is that I work really hard. People can outwork me for sure, but it's going to be tough. And that's important because when you make these mistakes and you buy the wrong deal and the world is collapsing around you, sometimes you sit back and you say, the only resource I have is hard work to dig myself out of this. So that was one thing that saved me in those moments. But the other thing that I do think I'm a little bit good at is I do have an ability to assess risk and reward. Generally, as humans, we fall on one side of that spectrum, quite far on one side of that spectrum or the other. You meet somebody and all they see is the risk in the deal. And that person generally will spend hours and hours and hours vetting the deal, and they'll see every angle. But frankly, they suffer from paralysis by analysis, and they never make the bet because they can only see the risk, even though they can also see all the reward. And then you have the other person that says, every deal is going to be a unicorn and $1 billion, and all they see is the reward. They don't ever see any of the risk. I think it's actually a little bit rare, and it's something that we're not trained and we're not taught, that somebody can actually see the risk and the reward and assess them. So I knew every time that we were buying a property that we might lose our money, but I also knew that the cards were weighted in my favor, and if I was able to get enough bats at plate, eventually I would hit some balls. And as it turned out, we hit almost every ball because the moment was so good. In retrospect, I probably could have been riskier. I probably could have doubled down. I probably could have done 2 or 3 or 4 times more than what I actually did. That would have been the wise thing to do. So sometimes I say I'm kicking myself for not having gone deeper in that moment. Now, the converse of it is there were so many moments that we thought that the world was actually collapsing. And in those moments, it's really hard to stare that in the eye and still move forward. I do think that both in this moment right now, when we're in a moment of exuberance, for many reasons, pandemic aside, as well as in the moment of complete despair of 2008, those are both potentially bubbles. And what happens in a bubble is they feed themselves. One is a bubble up and the other is a bubble down. But when they're feeding themselves, they're self-fulfilling prophecies. And so we have to realize, okay, take a step away from that this is the human propaganda is building this either up or down. And how do we see the forest through the trees a little bit? But we made a lot of mistakes along the way. And I got bailed out by a market that recovered. And had it not recovered, I might be sitting in a very different chair right now.